So once you're here, you can hover over resources and then click on website design guide. And this is just a simple guide that I created for you guys so that you can sort of refer back to it and sort of understand a little bit more about web design. Because I think that when we're creating a website on WordPress, years and years ago, it was about, we didn't have the tools to create it. Now we have like so many different drag and drop tools. It's not really about the tools that we use to create it. It's more about, how do we design it? Like, how do we make it look good every single time? So with this design guide, you can actually use it for designing other things as well, like for your business card or maybe like your logo. You can use the same tips for it as well. So it's really, really important to understand. So the first tip that I recommend is to just choose one font. Now, the reason why I recommend it is because years and years ago when I was creating my first tutorial, everyone chose like, 3-4 different fonts and it didn't look very good. So I do want to explain it. So if we go to like Apple or some of the top websites in the world, and you can actually download a Chrome extension. It's called What Font. So you can download that and you can hover over the websites that you like. And what you're going to notice is that they basically just use one font and maximum probably 2 fonts on their website. So they just use the size as well as, the boldness of the text to sort of differentiate the text a bit. So as you can see, it's very, very consistent. They don't use, a lot of different fonts. So same thing if you go to like Rolex as well. So click on that, you hover over here, right? So the same as well, scrolling down, same. And we want to go back over here. There's 2 different typefaces that you have to understand. So these are the main ones. Now there's a sans serif and also the serif typeface. On the edges, it's plain and also the strokes are even width. So on the other hand, the serif typeface is they've got curves on the side and also it's thick and thin strokes. So this one looks a little bit more traditional, elegant, and it's got a handcrafted look. So if you go to Tiffany & Co, you're going to notice that they have it for their logo and also for their heading, mainly because they want to appear elegant and maybe it's like a handcrafted feel to it. So that's why they have it. So same thing with Rolex, how they have it in their logo. So that is a serif typeface. But when we go to Apple, right, they obviously want to appear modern. It's not really like a elegant type of handcrafted thing, right? It's more about tech. So they use a sans serif typeface. So you have to think about your brand and think about how you want to appeal to your audience. Like, is what you're creating maybe something you are creating by hand? Maybe you want to use the serif typeface. Maybe if you just want to have a simple and clean website, I'd personally just recommend sans serif for 80% of the websites that you guys can create. So this is just simple, clean, and modern, and most websites actually use this. Okay, so these are some of the top 5 that you can actually use that I recommend for most beginners to start off with. And you've also got some to start off with as well for the serif typeface. Okay, so now if you do want to choose, like let's say this one over here, what I do recommend is only using it for your headings. Like for example, if you go to Tiffany & Co, using it for your headings, down here, headings, scrolling down, okay, headings over here, and then also for your logo as well. So same thing for Rolex, they only use it for their logo and they just use the sans serif for their body, heading, fonts, and everything like that. Okay, because if you have too much of that font, then it's just going to look really sort of old, and I don't think that personally looks very, very good. So that's what I recommend. But what I do recommend most of the time is probably sticking with a sans serif, and then you won't go wrong. So scrolling down over here, so for the body font size, you do want to keep it between 14 and 18. You don't want it to be too small or too large. Too large is just going to look really, really ugly, especially if you have a large body of text like this. So this one is pretty good, right? 16, 15, that's very, very good. And also for the line length. So sometimes I see a lot of people create a website and you've got one huge block of text and that doesn't look very good. So you want to try and break that up into maybe 2 different sections like this, or you could have maybe a little bit wider, but I guess you guys get the picture, but just don't have like, huge paragraphs from left to right. So you want to break it up. Now the next thing is, which is really, really important, is the text hierarchy. So if, for example, you want to create a heading and a subheading, you don't want something like this, because you want something where when people look at it, they know what to focus on. So first of all, you want to focus on the headline and then the subheadline, right? If you look at that one, you're like looking at 2 different things at the same time. Okay, so same thing over here. So you do want to differentiate this a little bit better by maybe having something like this, having a color, and maybe you can also increase the line or letter spacing. And then scrolling down, you can also do something like this, where you've got the heading where it's sort of a little bit more neutral color, a little bit lighter than the heading over here. And you've also capitalized it as well, right? So it just looks a lot better. So if you go to Apple, they've got really, really good hierarchy. So new, and then smaller, big, and then not so big, all right? So people focus on this first, then this, and then maybe over here, and then the button. You don't want something like this over here, okay? So let's go back over here and scroll down. And what I personally do recommend is just choosing one accent color to start off with, because a lot of people, you don't know which color to choose, right? And then a lot of people choose like 3 different colors and use it not consistently throughout your website, and that just looks really bad. So what I do recommend is maybe reading up on color meanings. So like Google it and find out, which color suits your brand. You also got to think about your competition as well. So you can go to this website over here, and let's say, for example, I want to choose maybe this pink color over here. Just copy that, and then you've got the color code. So you can just basically choose sort of one color and use sort of different shades of that color on that website. So you can actually go over here, and you can also go to Adobe. And what you can do is find an image on Unsplash. And let's say if you like classic. And we scroll down, and maybe you like a certain picture with a certain mood. So you can download that image. Let's say, for example, let's just download that, and I'll show you quickly. And head back over here, close it, select file, and then we can select that file, open. And then we can choose a color palette, basically by selecting on the left here, right, different moods that we can extract from the picture. And then we can use these colors consistently on our website. So that's what I recommend if you do want to go that route. But if you're just starting out, maybe just choose one color and then use sort of the same shade, right? It's going to make your website look more consistent and it's going to look really good. Now, if you don't know which color to choose, like for example, when you're building out your website, you might be thinking, what color should I choose? Now, generally for the header section and for the footer section, you want to keep these neutral colored. Like for example, header and footer, you want to either keep it white or maybe like dark gray or something like that, or a transparent header, because you don't want to choose, let's say, a color. Let's say if you do choose a color, for example, we choose a random pink color. And when we add an image over here, it's going to be harder to match, right? So think about if you're building out your own house, if you're painting your room pink, then it's going to be harder to match with the furniture. But if you have just a white wall and you have a very, very neutral color, flooring and things like that, it's going to be very, very easy to match. So any picture will be good. So that's what I don't recommend, choosing like a colored header and footer section. So if you go to the top website, same thing, very neutral colored. The Rolex is transparent, which I'll show you how to make. Tiffany & Co, just if you don't know which color to use, especially for like buttons, or you can also use it to separate content. So if you go back on my website over here, so I use a neutral color to create a background to separate content. So this is very, very useful. So if we zoom out of our website a little bit more, so you can see that I sort of break up each of the different sections with either a neutral background color or an image, and then white color, and then an image like that. Same thing for Apple, and we scroll down over here, and they break it up with some neutral colors like that. Same thing, and a lot of websites do it. So that is the basics of it. And for the button styles and colors, I'll show you that a little bit later on. So let's get back into creating our website. So let's go back over here.